Hey, all my little sinners and saints. It's been a while. Today we're going to look at John Holmes's connection to the Wonderland murders. Okay, whereas warnings. A lot of people may know this man. It said, what could one of the most famous adult industry stars of the 1970s have in common with one of the most infamous murder scenes in the history of Los Angeles? More than you think. Let's take a closer look at the gruesome murders and history of the Wonderland murders. To fully understand the events that led to the Wonderland murders, you need to look at the life and times of the notorious John Holmes, pictured here if you don't know. As the New York Times puts it, Holmes was a very popular and prolific adult movie performer who became famous for his many escapades in the adult industry in the 1970s. Though he died in 1988 from AIDS, um, at just 43, his IMDb page reveals that he had no less than 231 credits as an actor. A vast majority of them were porn. However, Holmes' life was all rose and this wasn't all roses and disrobement. Over his years of increasing fame, he which developed a costly habit that started out a minimum and then ended up being $1,500 per day. He started using cocaine. In the middle of scenes, he would disappear for long stretches, but his co-workers knew where to find him in the bathroom doing freebase. He stated that he would become the butt of all jokes, no pun intended, which traveled around like wildfire. To get Holmes to work, they said you'd have to leave a trail of freebase from the bathroom to the bedroom. This behavior led to a huge decrease in income, which caused him to return to small town crime and some very questionable company. A key person in the Wonderland murders is a nightclub owner, Eddie Nash. This is also Holmes. This is Mr. Eddie Nash. This is all the drugs that he had. He had, I think it was $1 million worth. It said, according to the newspaper, Nash was the kind of guy who had $1 million in cocaine stashed in his house, where he would eventually go to prison for. However, that's far from the only thing that the authorities suspected him of over the years. As the Los Angeles Times tells us, Nash was fearsome nightlife magnet, and John Holmes once called him, quote, the most evil man I've ever known. However, it's worth noting that there was a time when the man's relationship, at least on the surface, was far warmer than the chilly compliment implies. For LA Weekly, Nash turned a messy hot dog stand into a massive nightclub empire. Excuse me, that included as many as 36 locations, including hot clubs like the Paradise Room. Nash also was heavily involved in the drug trade that flourished in these establishments. All in all, the stories make Nash seem like the kind of guy you definitely don't want to cross, especially if far more than a small time gangster. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened when the Wonderland gang committed the murders. As surviving members of the group, David Lidded put it, this certain type of dope dealer that you don't want to rob, Mr. Nash. It was obvious from the time we got into the house that we were over our heads. Let me give you a little backstory. John Holmes used to buy cocaine from Nash. And so on one of his visits over there, because he was failing at the porn industry and he had this, $1,500 plus addiction a day, he went to this gang and it's called the Wonderland gang. It's known for doing, crimes around Hollywood or, Los Angeles. And he wanted them to rob Nash. So he went over one day to buy cocaine from him, and he left Nash's back door open for the Wonderland gang to come in. The exact circumstances of the first meeting between John Holmes and Eddie Nash are unclear, but LA Weekly tells us the two soon became close enough to Nash that they were known to refer to Holmes as his brother. The pair may simply have been impressed with each other's respective line of works and similar reputations they shared. The old Margold, who knew them both best, said that the interest of Holmes sparked towards Nash for a future drug culture, and an interest for Nash towards Holmes was the adult industry, fast lane lifestyle. Nash was about as mysterious as Holmes was, and I think the mutual mystery attracted them to each other. Regardless of how the pair originally became close, Holmes was clearly aware of how dangerous Nash was, and even warned a female acquaintance, Dawn Shriver, Schiller, Dawn Schiller, that the nightclub owner could make people disappear. The relationship between the magnet and the porn star was also pretty clearly skewed in former's favor, thanks to Nash's power and access to drugs. Holmes' relative distribution and drug addiction made them a good pair. As a result, Holmes did some pretty unsavory things to keep Nash in his good graces. The Wonderland murders has many names, but arguably the catchiest one is based on the victims of the crime. They were the so-called Wonderland gang. According to Salon, they were collective. They were a loose collective of drug dealers, eventually named after their base of operations on 8763 Wonderland Avenue. John Holmes reportedly fell into the Wonderland gang because of his own drug habit. They were most they were almost certainly not his favorite choice of company, seeing as the Globe and Mail tells us that the gang was extremely small time. However, beggars can't be choosers, and Holmes was seriously in debt, and pretty much no one would sell him drugs anymore. So he had to work in whatever circles he could have access to. As the Los Angeles Times tells us, at least one of the witnesses in the court proceedings around the Wonderland murders later said that the gang was affiliated with Ed Nash through Holmes. As the wanting adult industry superstar was on good terms with Nash, he became a carrier of sorts between the parties. The Wonderland gang stole stuff and Holmes took it to Nash's place and traded it for a haul of drugs. If things would have stayed that way, the story might have ended up differently. Unfortunately, on June 29, 1981, things took a turn for the worse. According to the UPI, the road to the Wonderland murders was paved with bad intentions. John Holmes was involved with both the small time Wonderland gang and a considerably wealthier Eddie Nash. And as the prosecutor Ron Cohen put it, the adult entertainment star eventually noted, quote, Nash was ripe for robbery. Through Holmes presumably didn't take part in the actual robbery, he allegedly instrumentally played an instrumental part in the plot and purposely left the back door of Nash's house open in order for the Wonderland gang to enter. The gang's haul consisted of drugs, jewelry, and cash, and its value from Cohen's estimate of $10,000 to the $1 million reported by LA Weekly. However, the possible thing that sealed the gang's deal or sealed their fate was the sheer humiliation that they caused Nash. They had stuck a gun to his face and was threatening to kill him, and they had shot the bodyguard, and he lived though. But so Nash was wanting to say his prayers, and he was begging for his life, and apparently that was demeaning. Um, the robbers surprised the nightclub owner and his bodyguard, who received a minor gunshot wound in the process. Reportedly, Nash was terrified and certain that he'd die. Prosecutor Cohen later described the situation. Eddie Nash fell to his knees. He was humiliated. He humiliated himself by asking permission to say his prayers. From the robbery on to the actual murders, the law has never officially been able to make sense of things. However, the story goes, the Wonderland gang's robbery went well, and Holmes had his share of the haul. But as Salon tells us, the group's luck was about to turn. Nash soon found out who robbed him, and it didn't take him long to find out that Holmes had been with the thieves inside man. Said, you think I'm stupid? You think I ain't gonna figure this out? After LA Weekly notes, Holmes had connections and debts to both Nash and the Wonderland crew, and was the individual connecting both parties. He was the only one connecting both parties. Per UPI, the authorities certainly thought that Nash subsequently forced Holmes to set up the murders as revenge, and there is some evidence that the porn star himself was present at the scene when the crimes took place. As the Los Angeles Times tells us, on July 1st, 1981, the killer or killers stepped into the Wonderland gang's den without any sign of breaking and entering. The events that followed occurred in just 40 hours after Nash was robbed, and they were hardly muted. Okay, this right here is the house that they're going to break into. It's on Wonderland Avenue. I'm going to show you some pictures. This is the layout of the house. This is just showing the address. This was Liberace's lover. He's going to come into play soon. One neighbor woke to screams of a man who was begging for his life. 4 people died in the attack. William Dervale, Ronald Larness, Joey Miller, and Barbara Richardson. There was only one survivor, Susan Lannis, whose moans alerted the passerbys a few hours later after the incident. However, the injuries she suffered in the incident caused lasting brain damage. The police were quick to connect John Holmes to the gruesome murder scene. They were said that they made him come in and watch the murders, that they held him against the wall, and it'll touch it here in a minute, but the only evidence that was left there was John Holmes's bloody handprint next to a victim. This was presumably aided by the fact that they had discovered his palm prints near one of the victims' seat, which was a pretty clear indication that he had been present at the scene. According to the LA Weekly, the police were just one of Holmes' problems at this point. He had a history as the police informant during his days as a porn star. They said that anybody he didn't like in the porn industry, he would tell on them and get them thrown out. Happily snitching on the industry people he didn't get along with to the Vice Squad connection. It is possible that the combination of this reputation and the mess he found himself in caused a surprising amount of people to go after his head. Holmes' girlfriend, Dawn Schiller, said, "We were told that Eddie was one of the contracts out on John." John also had a wife. She comes into play too. There were all these mysterious other people John was about to rat on. People were afraid he was going to inform on them. The Wonderland murders remain unsolved to this day, though as Salon points out, it's not because people don't know what happened. It's just because there's no official conviction. Okay, they tried to convict Holmes, and in the end, after all these trials between Nash and Holmes and all of this, Holmes ended up dying in 1988, but he was acquitted. There was deadlocks and then acquitted, and then they tried to open it again, and Nash finally pleaded to some lesser charges. He admitted to a charge, but the statute of limitations had run out on that intimidating a witness, I think. There is no mystery because we know who is involved and we know why, but we have a certain set of rules to follow that people who go out and perpetrate crimes don't. Per LA Weekly, John Holmes was the first to stand trial in 1981 but was acquitted in 1982. The only jail time that he received in the case was 111 days for contempt of court because he refused to answer the grand jury's questions until Eddie Nash was locked up for an unrelated narcotics charge. These were the people that got killed. As Nash, he went to court for the murders in 1990. By this time, John Holmes is dead. But a single discerning juror caused a hung jury and a mistrial. That's what it was, is he tampered with the jury. He paid her $50,000. A second attempt in 1991 acquitted him entirely. According to the LAPD online, he didn't get away entirely scot-free. In 2001, Nash pleaded guilty to a number of racketeering charges that effectively proved that he was involved in planning the murders and threatened and bribed witnesses and a jury. For this, he served a whopping 1 year in prison. Though John Holmes was acquitted of the Wonderland murders himself, his connection to them has long been fairly clear. According to the Los Angeles Times, the authorities believe he was an active party, and the porn star himself told a biographer that he was forced to witness the murders while one of the culprits were threatening him with a gun. Arguably, the most interesting version of this story comes from John Holmes's wife, Sharon, who says that the broken man told her he had come to her door all bloody and stuff. I think that's what she's talking about. But so the broken man told her the real story a few weeks after the incident. According to her, her crying husband revealed that he actually committed the crime with three thugs and that he was forced to lead them to the site and stand by as the events transpired. While John didn't actually reveal the names of the culprits, he said that he knew them. Some of them, Sharon Holmes Some have called Sharon Holmes' account into question and noted that John was such a notorious liar that he simply couldn't be trusted. However, if true, this alleged confession offers a lot of insight into the terrifying night. As a high profile, bloody murder case right on the edge of Tinseltown, it is no surprise that the Wonderland murders have made their mark on pop culture, especially because the cases involved a celebrity of sorts. 2003 crime drama is based on the events um, of the Wonderland murders. What was it? Boogie Nights, maybe? Yeah, Boogie Nights. Um, Dirt Diggler. Um, sorry, the 5-year-old came out. But this was just insane. This was in Laurel Canyon in Los Angeles, California. I kind of like to give you all the information that's just an overview. It was pretty much all of it though, but still it's kind of an overview of it. And I thought since this was not a necessarily long video, that we would add a couple other little videos in. And these are going to be short, so just try to be happy with them. Okay, this is Christina and Aldrich Rick. When we're in need of a good scare, sometimes fiction can be the best answer. A creepy movie or a spine tingling novel might just be the thing to satisfy our urge for fright. However, sometimes the truth, they say, is stranger than fiction. For a chilling thrill that has added boost to one of the 100% real, today we will be looking at 5 strange but true cases. Some of them were not solved. This is a fiery felony. By all accounts, Christina and I'm going to call him Andy were considered likable, described by their neighbors as being nice, hardworking. In February of 2021, the couple was in their late 50s and living in Georgetown, Ontario, Canada. Georgetown is considered to be safe and beautiful and close to Toronto, giving residents the luxury of big city amenities with a quaint small town feel. Since the area has such tranquil reputation, it is also a shock when emergency services were called to the Redrick's idyllic cul-de-sac early in the morning of February 17th, 2021. By the time that the authorities had got to the home on Hidden Lake Trail around 5:30, the house was completely engulfed in flames. After extinguishing the blaze, fire crews entered the rubble and found 2 bodies, presumed to be Christina and Andy. From the start, the entire situation seemed strange, and the Ontario Fire Marshal initiated an investigation. The bodies were found in the garage where the fire was started. The flames went on to consume the entire 2-car garage and the Redrick's vehicles and a portion of their home. By February 19th, 2 days after the incident, the fire marshal handed the case over to the police. Though details of the case remain largely unavailable to the public, the Rarick's autopsy made it clear that this was no accident, and neighbors' chilling surveillance footage confirmed it. This was their home afterwards. I'm going to point out what you're seeing in a minute. Around 6:30 p.m. on February 16th, Andy's car was spotted pulling into the garage. This is actually his car right here pulling into the garage. There's a figure over here, and I got another picture and you could see it better. But actually walks into the garage on this side of the car and hides until he closes the door. As he places the car in park and begins to gather his things before exiting the vehicle, you can see the shadow. A shadow figure approaches the garage and enters on the passenger side of the car. Andy doesn't appear to see the dark figure as he proceeds normally, getting out his stuff of the car, walking towards the internal entrance to his home and pressing the garage button for it to close. The last thing you see is the garage door closes and the hooded figure slightly dipping his head to remain hidden behind the car as Andy enters the house. No one knows the timeline and how exactly events unfolded for the Redricks after that honing footage, or how long the killer lurked in the home before he struck. However, just under 12 hours later, the Redricks were dead in their home and the home was completely engulfed in flames. Canada police have remained tight-lipped about the finer details of the investigation, but just over a month later, in March 2021, a suspect was apprehended. Authorities say 27-year-old Harrison Brown is the culprit, originally hailing from a town close to Georgetown. He knew Andy before the murder from business dealings. Again, the nature of their relationship is unknown, and all we do know is that Andy was the manager at a boiler inspection and insurance company of Canada. In the August of the same year, Brown was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of arson. And this is a picture of the garage exploding out. This is the ringing doorbell thing. Okay. On September 2021, his case was pending trial, and the status is still unknown to this day. But this one is a doubtful drowning. Petite, seditious dog lover Debbie Wolf of Fayetteville, North Carolina, Muckakalake, was not the one person to miss work or even be late. Having graduated nursing school 2 years prior, Debbie was still fresh at her job. Though, according to the Fayetteville Times, she was known by her co-workers to be a dedicated nurse, loving young woman, and all-around happy person. During the holiday season of 1985, Debbie spent the day with her family, Christmas Day with her family, before returning to work on December 26. Last seen alive when she left her shift around 4, Debbie never showed up for her scheduled shift the following day, a fact that deeply troubled her mother, Jenny Edwards. Disturbed by her daughter's uncharacteristic absence, Jenny, her husband John, and a family member, Kevin Gorton, headed out to where Debbie lived with her 2 dogs, Mason and Morgan, on a rural patch of land outside Fayetteville. This is the land. These are the two that went out to help look for. Upon reaching Debbie's cabin, her family found things in disarray. Her normal, neat dwelling was cluttered with clothes and personal belongings tossed in strange places. An odd message on Debbie's answering machine implied that she hadn't been at work for several days, which was false. Debbie had only missed 1 day at the time, and the male voice on the other end of the phone stated that he was concerned and hoped she wouldn't miss any more days. Um, Empty beer cans, a brand that Debbie didn't drink, were scattered about the property, and most troubling of all, Mason and Morgan hadn't been fed. Jenny, understandably distraught, contacted the police, who refused to get involved. Debbie has to be missing for 72 hours. On December 31st, for the record, that's not true now. You can report people missing hours after they're missing. On December 31st, 5 days after Debbie's disappearance, the police finally arrived at the property with bloodhounds in tow. With the police unable to find any trace of her, Jenny grew frustrated, and her sights were set on an area of her daughter's home that hadn't been fully explored, a shallow, murky pond on the property. Family friend Kevin and Gordon returned to the site with each other and ready to search the pond. On New Year's Day, 1986, the two men found Debbie's lifeless body mere moments after beginning their dive. Gordon noted that there were two sets of footprints on the bottom of the pond, as well as drag marks scarred the mud. Debbie's body appeared to be shoved head first into a 55-gallon barrel that was to be known to be kept on her property. The police were quickly notified, and the following day the pond was drained and Debbie's body was retrieved. Curiously, though, there was no barrel. Official autopsies concluded that Debbie had drowned and that it seemed likely that she had fallen into the water while she was outside playing with her dogs and tragically perished. However, the evidence is not so clear cut. To begin with, Debbie's body and clothes were relatively clean. If she had been submerged in dirty water for several days, there should have been silt and debris found on her body and within her clothes. Regarding her clothing, her family insists that she was wearing stuff that was not hers. Debbie's Debbie was discovered wearing clothes and shoes that were not the proper size. They were much too big. For example, the jacket she had on was discovered to be a men's size small, and the shoes were a men's size 6, roughly 3 sizes larger than Debbie wore. Her car was also discovered on the property, parked in a strangely with the seat pulled all the way back. Debbie was 5'3" and would not have been able to drive the car with the seat in that position. Then there was the matter of the beer cans. It was not a beer that she was known to consume, and it was the suspicious voicemail. Finally, the barrel. Authorities insist that there was never a barrel, and maybe they mistook it for the jacket floating around her body as the barrel. However, the barrel on Debbie's property was never recovered, and Kevin and Gordon insist that they were not mistaken. I think that's kind of a hard thing to mistake, but you never know. Although the official ruling is Debbie died by drowning, her friends and family have never accepted that verdict. She was known to be a strong swimmer, and the autopsy also showed a minimal amount of water in her lungs. Years passed and no suspects have ever emerged, although one hypothesis exists. At the hospital, Debbie was in charge of coordinating the volunteers, and two male volunteers had become fixated on her days prior to her death. According to her mother, both were interested romantically in her and had been rebuffed. One of them had a history of psychiatric illness, frightened Debbie by finding her phone number and calling her repeatedly, saying he knew where she lived and threatening to come and find her. The other had just been turned down by Debbie, telling him that she wanted to remain friends. Both men were questioned by the police, but no substantial evidence of their involvement was ever found. Frustratingly, no further traction has been made in this bizarre case, and authorities seem to be determined to close it. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, now this is a wild one, people. This is a wild one. Okay. Born 1985, Bethany Ann Livland's talent and intelligence stood out at an early age. She grew up in a conservative and religious household, and she carried that deep Christian faith with her in her adult life. At Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas, where Bethany was on a scholarship, she encountered a Casimir, oh my God, I'm just going to skip it. Tyler Deaton, um, which is this guy. This is his friend. I'm thinking I got a better picture of this guy because he comes into play. But this is Bethany, obviously. The pair quickly connected and bonded over the shared faith. Tyler's natural magnetism pulled the other students into his orbit. I'm still trying to think of that word. And he soon found himself leading his newfound friends intensive prayer sessions that frequently involved healing the sick and warding off evil spirits. With his friends began looking at to Deaton as a leader and prophet, he privately struggled with his sexuality, believing, as many hardline Christians do, that he needed to change, that he could change his homosexuality and heal himself. By 2007, Tyler decided that he wanted to go into Kansas City to join the International House of Prayer, not IHOP, a church in the area. Bethany and over 20 of the students from Southwestern University dutifully packed up and followed him to Missouri. Tyler, Bethany, and his followers settled into a life in Kansas City, living in two houses separated by gender and calling themselves the community. This is taking a weird turn. The community. Bethany finished up her education, becoming a nurse, and all while living a strictly religious life within the community. Tyler was the de facto leader. He was increasingly controlling, dictating members' eating habits, dating relationships, and clothes choices. Sound familiar? In 2010, Tyler continued to deny his sexuality, struck up a romantic relationship with Bethany, and by August 2012, the pair were married. Let me see if I can. Oh, this is some of his people. Bethany's family, though allowed to attend the wedding, felt uneasy about the situation she was in. Bethany's mother, Carol, felt sad and left out, remarking, "We weren't even participants. We were observers," while her lifelong friend, Taryn O'Brien, felt like Bethany was no longer herself. When Taryn left after the wedding, she had a haunting feeling that that would be the last time she would ever see her friend alive. The marriage was troubled from the start. Despite a 2-week honeymoon in Costa Rica, the pair never consummated their marriage, with Tyler finding himself unable to move past his homosexual feelings. When the pair returned to the United States, Tyler continued to seek out sexual relationship with other men, including a member of their own community, Micah Moore. That's somewhat of the picture I showed you. I'll show you another one. Even though it's unknown to Bethany if she knew about her husband's extramarital affairs or not, there's like an intimacy with her was taking a toll, and only 6 weeks into the young marriage, Tyler noted that she seemed suicidal. Her family was kept in the dark when it came to Bethany's unraveling mental health, unaware that she had suicidal feelings, and obviously the fact that she had been admitted to a psychiatric ward after threatening to drink windshield wiper fluid. I'm sorry. It's, oh my God. Just imagine. I'm going to drink the windshield wiper fluid. It sounds crazy. I guess that's why they put her in. So I don't know. On October, it's the uncomfortableness of it. On October 29, 2012, Bethany appeared intensely distraught after one of Tyler's sermons, and the next day she was found dead in the back of a van. A loose paper, a loose plastic bag around her head and an empty bottle of sleeping pills by her body, and a suicide that read, "My name is Bethany Deaton. I chose this evil thing. I did it because I wouldn't be a real person, and what is the point of living if it is too late for that? I wish I had chosen differently a long time ago. I knew it all and refused to listen. Maybe Jesus will save me." Though her death was initially ruled a suicide, Bethany's family was suspicious. They had a right to be. Roughly 10 days later, on November 9th, Bethany's longtime friend and her husband's sexual partner, Micah Moore, appeared at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office and confessed to killing Bethany. He claimed that, acting under Tyler's orders, he had drugged Bethany and then suffocated her. Through some of the details of his confession fit, something still seemed off to investigators, and they began to probe further into the life of the community. Moore further admitted that ever since Bethany had moved into the house, the men's side of the house, um, the marriage to Tyler, the male members of the community had been drugging and assaulting her. This appeared to supply motive as Tyler had become afraid that Bethany was going to report the abuse. Though he later recanted, Moore was indicted in November of 2012 on first-degree murder. In January 2013, he pleaded not guilty and released on $250,000 bail. The community quietly dissolved, with the International House of Prayer severing all ties with Tyler and his followers. Shockingly, on October 2014, the charges against Micah Moore were dropped, with prosecutors citing that there was a lack of evidence. Additional evidence has surfaced that points to Bethany committing suicide, including the FBI matching handwriting on the note and her handwriting that's known. However, the cause of death remains undetermined, rather than being listed as a suicide. As a former as Tyler, former members of the community paint himself as a manipulative cult-like leader. Even though he didn't have Bethany murdered, his treatment of her and treatment that he allowed encouraged among his followers certainly contributed to the dwindling mental health. He moved back to Texas, became a pre-calculus teacher at Lancaster High School just outside of Dallas. When his potential involvement in his wife's death came to light, he was suspended from his job. Since 2013, Tyler has spoken openly with the media, and there is a lot of interviews of him talking. Spoken openly with the media, participating in lengthy interviews for CBS 48 Hours. The case is still open, and investigators are not satisfied with the answers they currently have. Although nothing directly can be tied to Tyler Deaton at this time, when it comes to indirect evidence, Colonel Ben Kinley of Jackson County Sheriff's Office says simply, "I would rather save that for another time." Okay, let's move on to this craziness. Okay, this man was found in a cornfield on June 30th. Okay, it was a balmy summer day in June 30th, 1999, when Ricky McCormick's badly decomposed body was discovered by a passerby. Authorities have arrived in the middle of the cornfield in West Alton, Missouri, a rural community right on the Missouri-Illinois state borderline. Ricky was a 41-year-old high school dropout, and he hadn't had the easiest life at this time. His body was discovered lying face down in the Missouri mud. Though he was never officially diagnosed with anything, a family member believed that Ricky struggled with some sort of mental disability or illness, leaving him barely literate but still able to function in society. The middle-aged man held down various low-level minimum-wage jobs until a relationship of underage girl landed him in jail for 11 months. Upon his release, Ricky began working for a man named Baha Hamdali. I don't know. Not even gonna not even gonna try. And he had some less than legal hobbies legal hobbies and frequent roped Ricky into doing crimes, forcing him to go down to Orlando, Florida, and traffic huge amounts of marijuana back to Missouri. Apparently, this did not always go smoothly, and both Ricky's aunt and his girlfriend noted that he seemed especially rattled after his last trip before his death, though they never found out why. Ricky was last seen on June 27, 1999, 3 days before his body was discovered. A co-worker of his remembered Ricky coming by the gas station for a moment in the morning, but no one knows where he went after he left. When his body was discovered 3 days later, it was hardly degraded and more so than it should have been, despite the summer warmth. Authorities surmised that he had been killed elsewhere and kept in a hot building or vehicle before being dumped in the lonely cornfield, contributing to the advanced state of his decomposition. Additionally, Ricky was 20 miles from his home and had no method of transportation to his name that could account for his such a distance being from his own home. Inside his pockets, police found two curious slips of paper with roughly 30 lines on them. They were unintelligible and scrawled text. I don't know. If anybody can see that, screenshot it maybe and try to figure it out. They further added to the mystery surrounding the case. Although no cause of death was able to be established by the medical examiner, police decided that he was a victim of homicide and based on the strange conditions of his death alone. Notorious drug dealer Gregory Lamar Knox was suspected at first, since he was already presumed to have committed 4 other murders in Ricky's neighborhood. Secondly, his boss at the gas station, Baha, was also suspected thanks to his relationship with Ricky and his hair trigger temper. Baha was known to fly into a rage and shoot people, so it didn't seem too far fetched that he would have killed Ricky in a fit of anger. Unfortunately, no evidence was found to tie either Knox or Baha to the slaying. This mysterious notes, the mysterious notes in Ricky's pocket continued to baffle investigators as high up as the FBI crypt analyst and racketeering records unit. But the strange code had yet to be cracked. Some think the killer planted the strange puzzle as a way to torch investigators, while others believe that Ricky was passing coded notes between criminals. Another theory is the family largely supporters argue that Ricky's semi-illiterate state would cause him to scribble things, often not knowing what he was writing. A fourth logical explanation is that the notes were personal shorthand developed by Ricky, but his family doubts his mental capacity could develop such a system. As Ricky's aunt, Gloria McCormick, told the Riverfront Times in 2012, Ricky went in to see a psychiatrist and he said he had a brick wall in his mind. Over 20 years later, the police still have not discovered or have no idea of what happened to Ricky McCormick and are no longer closer to apprehending the killer. The FBI released the notes to the public in hopes that someone might be able to crack the strange code. Okay, August 2014. In early August 2014, New Zealand native Warnia Wright took an ill-fated trip to the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia for a wedding. Warna was an animal lover and deeply caring soul, with a friend describing her as being all about dignity, equality, fairness, and what's right. There was many pictures of her with different animals Lions, I mean, kangaroos. There was a lot of pictures of her actually with animals. After matching with the Gold Coast resident Gabe Toasty on the popular dating site Tinder, Warney agreed. Warren agreed to meet up with him. The duo, oh yeah, the duo ended up in Toasty's place after a unit a unit on the 14th floor of an apartment complex in the Surfers Paradise neighborhood. CCTV captured the pair entering the building around 8:45 p.m. on August 7, 2014. 5.5 hours later in the morning, on August 8, the 26-year-old Warner Wright would plummet to her death from Toasty's 14th floor balcony. At some point during the night, the two got heated into a heated argument with 3 hours worth of audio captured on Toasty's phone. No one knows exactly why he chose to press record on that fateful night, but at 12:55 a.m., his phone begins to capture audio. Toasty can be heard swearing at Wright, saying she was lucky he hadn't chucked her off the balcony. The full text of their altercation is difficult to grasp, and all that's already left is the audio that Toasty's allegations. He claims that Wright drank more throughout the evening, and she became increasingly and erratic, probably erotic too, and combative, leading him to lock her out on the balcony for his safety. Why would you not put this person out on, like, put them out of your house? You can see something don't look right. I don't think she looks drunkish, but she looks not happy, like something's going on. Though it is impossible to know for sure, it is claimed that Toasty was frightening and threatening Wright, even choking her at one point. Prosecutors argued that the sounds on the audio file from Toasty's phone consist with choking. It was hypothesized that once locked out of the unit, Wright had no choice but to try to flee from the clutches as she fell to her death, merely trying to escape. I think I have a reenact. This is a reenactment, people. A reenactment. But this is what they hypothesize as that she's trying to get down the balcony to the next floor, maybe. Um, what is certainly strange is Toasty's behavior immediately following the incident. 3 minutes after Wright's fatal fall at 2:23 a.m., CCTV captures him emerging from the building and proceeding into Surfers Paradise neighborhood. Soon after that, he makes a call to his father and updates him on the situation. His father urges him to stay in the area and he will get to him as soon as he can. So Toasty wanders around eating pizza until his father collects him at 3:10. It is unclear where the pair went afterwards. Toasty pleaded not guilty and the jury eventually agreed upon October 20th, 2016, refusing to convict him of either the murder or manslaughter. Jurors ultimately felt that there wasn't enough evidence and the involvement of alcohol, as well as the homeowner's right to remove. Let me read this again. Jurors ultimately felt that there was not enough evidence and the involvement of alcohol, as well as the homeowner's right to remove people from their dwelling, played into their verdict. Although Toasty might not have been legally guilty for Wright's demise, his behavior after the fact is morally gray at best and certainly paints the night with a cloud of suspicion. Additionally, in September of 2021, Toasty is now living under the name Eric Thomas. He surfaced in the news again. Imagine that. Oh, let me show you this one. This was him walking across the road. This time, his relationship was with a high school drama teacher, Sabrina Collins, in the spotlight. She alleged that during their courtship, Toasty sent her abusive text messages and voice messages, which prompted her to abandon the relationship and reported him to the police. When the police did nothing to remedy the situation, Collins went to the public, denouncing him on social media. Toasty claims that it is the other way around and that Collins is stalking and harassing him. How odd to find himself in another relationship of he said, she said type of situation. Would love to know what you think about these disturbing crime stories. Do you have any theories? Do these true crime things keep you up at night, people? Do they keep you up at night? Leave a comment below what you think about this. Do you like the multiple stories together, being short stories, or would you rather me do two long ones, or just do, over an hour of a long one? Just leave some feedback, and I appreciate you joining me. As always, it is good to see you people, even though I'm not seeing you right now. I will see you in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. I will see you later. Bye.